Greetings fellow Whovians and welcome to Timey-Wimey Reviews. With Black History Month currently being observed in the month of February in the US and a little bit later in the year in the UK and Europe, I find it's only fitting that I review the episode Rosa, considered by many as the best episode of Doctor Who from the modern era of season 11. Just in case you don't know the plot, the Doctor is trying to get her companions back to modern-day Sheffield, UK. Instead, they arrive in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955. The TARDIS picks up some Artron energy, meaning there is some time-travelling technology nearby. Whilst investigating, Ryan gets slapped by a local for trying to help her. Luckily, future figurehead and icon to many, Rosa Parks, was on hand to defuse that situation. There, the pieces start to fall into place as Team TARDIS learns that they've arrived in Alabama when segregation was still, unfortunately, lawful. And it's the day before Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus ordered by bus driver James Blake, in turn influencing the civil rights movement for better equality. However, an ex-con from the future known as Krasko wants to alter that history, and now it's up to the Doctor, Yaz, Ryan and Graham to try and stop him. First, I would like to say hats off to Vinette Robinson for her excellent portrayal as Rosa Parks. For me, she was the standout throughout this episode, and quite rightly too. She did a fantastic job as this character. Before I get into this episode proper, I would like to give praise to the production values that we've seen over the last 2 seasons of Doctor Who. It looks absolutely amazing. We get some really good examples in this episode as well, when we see the camera swoop around the streets of Alabama before the TARDIS dematerialises. That looks really good. However, substance over style, please. The stories have to be solid. That's what keeps Doctor Who going, and has done for nearly 60 years. So please keep the stories strong. That's the most important thing. However, credit where credit's due in terms of production values. When I reviewed Demons of the Punjab recently, I mentioned that it was a double-layered story where we had the Doctor battling monsters element and then all the themes sort of woven into this story. I feel in Rosa it's a bit of a reversal, where the main themes are the foreground, and quite rightly so, and the Doctor Who element is more of a plot device to get our characters from points A to B. If I'm being honest, the Doctor trying to stop Krasko was the weakest part of the narrative for this story, but it didn't really distract me, to be honest, because the themes for this story is the most important part for this episode of Doctor Who. I don't want to sound light-hearted, and I'm certainly not an expert in the subject matter, but I'm glad this episode took a strong approach to its themes of racism and equality by using language that can be considered as quite shocking, especially for a family show. I find it truly baffling that this was acceptable behaviour back then. Thankfully, I'm glad that it's not happening now, but there's still such a long way to go. In terms of racism and equality, we see that all the time. It's important to discuss and learn from these issues, and this episode is very good at bringing out those points. We had a scene where Ryan and Yaz is hiding in a back alleyway behind the hotel, and they talk about how they're dealing with it still in modern day, with Ryan being stopped extra by the police and Yaz being a police officer or PCSO, and she's still being discriminated by just by her colour of her skin. And again in this episode, where they mistaken her as a Mexican and raising those points of where she should sit on the bus, with Ryan being at the back and white people being at the front. What I also liked about this episode is that everyone had their part to play. This was a really good fine balance of giving each of our 4 main characters something to do, which was something that was definitely an improvement from compared to Demons of the Punjab, where one of the companions got lost in the shuffle. Here, that didn't happen. Everyone had their part to play. This episode also does a really good job of ramping up the tension as we try to find out whether Team TARDIS was successful in preserving history, and they're all there at that moment on the bus, and you can just see all their hearts breaking. Their faces are just truly horrified that they have to be at this moment on the bus to make sure that history plays out correctly. especially Graham's face. You know, his heart breaks. He doesn't want to be there, but to be fair, none of them want to be there, but they have to make sure that history is preserved. And then we hear the song "Rise Up" by Andrea Day start playing out as Rosa gets arrested. It's truly heartbreaking, but some powerful, powerful stuff. Some of the best moments in Doctor Who. I have to give a little bit of a nitpick for this episode, as we still see our actors still trying to find their way into their characters. To be fair, it is only 3 episodes into season 11, but some of the dialogue was a little bit clunky, just didn't quite gel as well as you know you might want to see, especially when the Doctor joked with Graham that she could be Banksy. To me, it just about works. They're just about stuck the landing for that one, but I can see some other people thinking, "Ooh, that's a bit too cringy." However, I'm going to give Rosa a TARDIS rating of 8.5 out of 10. Yes, the plot device used for the Doctor companion to Krasko doesn't quite work, although I'd like to see Krasko return in a future episode of Doctor Who. However, that doesn't really matter. The story themes here about racism and equality, that shines through in this episode of Doctor Who, and it's so strong. Such heartbreaking, very thought-provoking, and it should be. I can imagine this episode being played out in schools as a topic for discussion, and I am all for that. If you haven't watched this episode before, or you haven't seen it in a while, please give it a rewatch. The more we remember and learn, the better this planet is going to become. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the episode Rosa, and please feel free to check out my recent review of Demons of the Punjab. Link to that review is in the descriptions. Next time on Timey-Wimey Reviews, in honour of actor Nicholas Courtney, I will be reviewing the classic story Battlefield. Until then, please like the video, share the video and subscribe to the channel. And as the good doctor once said, she changed the world. In fact, she changed the universe.